One of the chief architects of the October the 7th attack, dead in the rubble. The broken body of Yahya Sinwar, killed in an Israeli attack in Gaza, a large open wound to the head, wearing military fatigues. Fitting perhaps for the man who planned the attack that brought the Middle East to the edge of all-out war. 2 other bodies were found in the rubble with Sinwar, along with identification documents, cash and combat equipment. One of the most striking details, the IDF did not know ahead of time that Sinwar was in the building. There was no advance intelligence. It was described as routine activity targeting Hamas. The unit that carried out the attack were trainee squad commanders. When they went through the rubble, they discovered Sinwar's body. This afternoon, Benjamin Netanyahu's office contacted the families of hostages to tell them that none of their loved ones still being held inside Gaza were in the building with Sinwar. The fear was that at times he had been in the presence of hostages serving as human shields. In July, Israel's military carried out an airstrike in the safe zone of al-Mawasi that killed 90 people. 2 weeks later, it said the head of Hamas's military wing, Mohammed Deif, was the target and that he'd been killed. In July, Hamas's political bureau chief assassinated in the Iranian capital Tehran. Ismail Haniyeh, the organization's most senior figure, killed by a concealed explosion in an apartment. And now today, the man who took over and whom Israel holds most responsible for the October the 7th attacks, crossed off the list. There are others, more may emerge, but as far as Israel's concerned, the upper echelon of Hamas is now decapitated. The reaction in Tel Aviv was muted. What would this mean for those still inside? How would their captors react? In Gaza, some of the population ground down by the war are not only blaming Israel for their plight, but Hamas as well. Reaction to the news of Sinwar's death? Just stop the war.
We are urging for the war to stop. We are not asking for them to assassinate this person or that. They have assassinated most of our leaders, and the war has not stopped. We are calling for the war to stop.
The big questions now. What will Sinwar's death mean for how Israel continues to prosecute this war? And with more than 42,000 Gazans dead, will it have been worth it? In February, the Israeli military released this video purporting to show Sinwar inside a Hamas tunnel in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. One of Israel's most wanted men had commanded his ever-depleting ranks throughout the last year, was in indirect contact with the countries mediating a possible hostage and ceasefire deal with Israel.
Long before the attacks of October the 7th last year, Yahya Sinwar was at the top of any notional Israeli target list. A former internal enforcer, a former prisoner in Israel, since 2017, the head of Hamas in Gaza. Born in southern Khan Yunis to Palestinian refugee parents, he was 25 at the time of the first Intifada, or uprising, in 1987. Recruited to the newly formed Hamas, quickly becoming its chief enforcer, punishing, killing Palestinians suspected of collaborating with Israel. In 1989, he was convicted by Israel for the abduction and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers and the murder of 4 Palestinians. He spent 22 years as an Israeli prisoner, even giving interviews in fluent Hebrew. Studying Israeli society, media, politics, the better he had it to attack and undermine them. His then interrogator telling us today that he was never in doubt about the threat he posed.
I'm really glad that he's dead, because it's very important, and believe me, I know him, to the whole world, not only to the Israel state, to the whole world, because his dream was to kill Israeli Jews and infidels. That was his big dream.
In 2011, he was one of more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners released in exchange for the captured Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Doctrinaire, long opposed to the Oslo peace process, with the aim of eradicating Israel and reclaiming all of Palestine, he established himself as a chief strategist, boosting ties with Iran. In 2015, he was defined by the US government as a specially designated global terrorist. His seniority within Hamas was cemented in 2017 when he became its Gaza chief, changing the power balance in favor of its military wing. The same year, Hamas issued an updated charter suggesting it would accept an interim Palestinian state alongside Israel. Sinwar entering into what some saw as an unspoken arrangement with Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel allowing Qatari funding for Gaza in the hope of containing Hamas and maintaining the division between it and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. But as October the 7th proved, and his speech nearly a year before it suggested, Sinwar was still planning a major attack.
We will come to you, God willing, in a roaring flood. We will come to you with an endless number of rockets. We will come to you in a flood of soldiers without limit. We will come to you with millions of our nation, tide after tide.
With the Al-Aqsa flood, as he called last year's attack, killing 1,200 Israelis and capturing 250, Sinwar dealt Israel a military humiliation and a deep psychological wound. But it also brought an unprecedented Israeli response, laying waste to Gaza, killing thousands of civilians and destroying much of Hamas's military capacity and now all of its top-level leadership.